Hello, I am Niall Crabtree and welcome to the start of this new design series. So if you didn't watch my last video, basically I was talking about why I came back to the channel, and that was because I feel like I have a lot more knowledge and a lot more, just my skill set overall has increased to the point where I feel like I can add value to the platform, you know? And one of the ways which I want to do that is I am currently designing a fighting game, a tabletop fighting game, and I thought it'd be great to do a series on that development. So basically every video in the series is going to be like very different. It's not going to be like a chronological, very linear path in which, okay, this week I'm doing this week I'm doing this, and I'm like sort of iterating and showing that process. Instead, it's just going to be, whilst I'm developing it, if I have an interesting topic to talk about because of the development, then I will do. So this video is going to be entirely about the introduction of the game, just so for all future videos you have that context for like what I'm talking about. So what do you do in this game? So this game, first of all, is called Fatal Knockout. That's something which I've only recently decided on. It's a very brand new name. I really like it. Shorthand is FKO. I think it rolls off the tongue quite well. It's on Board Game Geek right now if you want to add it to your wish list or whatever. But yeah, so in Fatal Knockout, you play as one of two fighters, and your aim is to basically beat up the other fighter before they can beat you up. You both have 5 hit points, and the first person to die loses, and so it's the last person standing who wins. And the way you deal damage and the way you move along this board in this like fighting arena is through cards. So this is an example of a card from the Zoner fighter. Now, the Zoner really likes being at distance and really likes shooting from a distance and doing damage without really getting up close and personal with their opponent, but that's kind of irrelevant at the moment. What I really want to talk about is just the card anatomy for Fatal Knockout. So just so you know exactly what you're looking at when you see a card like this, is a very, very simple card. Is right at the top you have your initiative, which is the number. Now what that does is it determines the order in which this card plays out once all cards have been revealed, and I'll get onto that more so when I get into Tabletop Simulator and I show you how a turn works. Then below that you have the abilities with what the card does. So with every card you read top down. So with this card you would attack 1, so 1 space forward, and that'll do 1 damage. And then you will move 1 either forward or backwards. So F and B, forward and backwards, and that'll help you read the cards quite easily. However, despite saying that, there are also cards which allow you to do these abilities in any order. So at the top, as you can see, initiative 8. So it's quite a high initiative card. I think the highest initiative is 14, but most end up going to about 11 or 12 per deck. So you've got to move 2 forwards, you can move 2 spaces forward, and then you can either attack 1 forward or rotate. However, there is a word at the bottom which says mix up, and it's in italics, and what that means is that you can choose to do this line first and then this line if you wanted to. That's just something which you can do if you want, and this is kind of specific just to one fighter, though that mechanic does creep into other fighters every now and again. And then this is an example of how complicated cards can get, well, most of how complex it can get. So this one has 4 different moves which you have to do in order. It's a 10 initiative, and it's for the grappler deck. So you move 1 forward or back, and then you can pull 1 space, so pull the enemy 1 space within 2 spaces forward or backwards. And then you can command grab. Command grab is a mechanic very specific to the grappler, in which it's kind of like a German suplex, where if you are in front of the grappler, you'll be grabbed from front to back, so you'll be like kind of like flipped over them. Or if you're behind them, you'll be grabbed from back to front, so you'll be flipped over, and your like orientation won't change. And orientation matters a lot in this game. And then finally, you can attack 1 backwards as well. So these are sort of like the 3 main examples of what different cards can do. Every deck has very specific and unique cards and abilities. So there's always going to be something different, which I won't be able to show you. But that's just an example of what cards look like and what they mean. And also, if you're unfamiliar with board game development, this is not what the cards are going to look like in the final version. In a few months I will have a final version, a relative final version, like a prototype, which I'll be taking to UK Games Expo, and it'll look very, very different to how this looks right now. So, moving on to Tabletop Simulator, I'm going to show you exactly how a turn plays out. So, let's say this is the start of the game. There is the rushdown fighter and there is the zoner fighter. So, the zoner fighter could decide to go first, and what they'll do, they'll look at the cards and they'll be like, okay, so what I can do is I can move one forwards. So what I'll do is I'll flip that card over and I'll play that card face down. All cards are played face down to begin with. And then maybe the rushdown character really wants to get in their face quite quickly as well, and they might have anticipated the fact that the zoner might have played just a move forward one because they feel like they're not in danger at the moment. So they'll play this card. And then the zoner, the player who went first, decides whether or not to play another card. And if they decide to, then the opponent has to play another card as well. Now, this is just so they can be like, okay, I've got like this plan, this like 3 cards, maybe they combo really well together, but the more cards you play, the more cards your opponent plays, and that can potentially mess up your plans. But at the same time, if you think that your opponent has a really good card in their hand that they're saving, but it's not quite great right now, then you can kind of just force them to play it. So that's really cool. But let's say that the zoner has decided, you know what, I'm done. So you flip over the cards, the zoner's like, right, okay, so I have to do this now. I have to move one forward and attack one forward, not back, but there's no one in this space, so nothing happens. And so what the rushdown character does is like, right, oh, I've got a good opening here, so I'm going to move 2 forward, so 1, 2, and then I can choose to attack or rotate. Well, I'm kind of just like right in front of the zoner right now, so I'll attack them, well, bam. And then they take a damage, and then they get 1 like damage marble, because it's just a marble at the moment. And then that's how rounds work pretty much. And then the cards go in the discard piles, people draw back up to 3 cards, and then it's the rushdown character to go next. And that's literally how simple the game is. So you might have noticed the fact that I'm talking about like forwards and backwards and rotates. That's because the orientation of your fire actually matters. Now you see these hands are sticking out. If like at the start of the game here, I moved 1 forward this way. But if I was facing that way, my move 1 forward would now be that way. So orientation actually matters quite a big deal in this game. It's like a very big deal. It's one of the core fundamentals of the game, and it can decide whether or not you do like 2 or 3 damage in a round and whether you miss every single shot. So it's part of the planning, and you really need to pay attention. So yeah, the plan for this game is very much for it to be a casual entry-level game, but with loads and loads of potential for this game to be like a tournament-level game, for it to be super hyper-competitive. The game itself is very, very tightly designed, but it's designed in a way that there aren't very many mechanics which are introduced constantly. There's not too many like situational rules. It's very, very simple on the base, but as you delve more and more into the mechanics and what the mechanics can do, and you can get into like card counting and stuff like that, it can really become quite complex, and it can be a very high skill ceiling to really be the best player, you know. So that's what I'm going to try and achieve. I'm going to try and achieve a fighting game with that type of competitive potential, and I want it to really mirror the games which I'm trying to simulate. So games like Tekken, Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, Smash Bros, that sort of competitive scene is what I want for Fatal Knockout. And hopefully you enjoy watching me on my journey as I do that. I've got a few videos planned coming up, like about me designing specific fighters and coming up with different ideas and just sort of the process about that, and that could hopefully help you on your design journey as well. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, hopefully you enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next one. Goodbye.